Please, I don't want to die." The voice was so small it nearly dissolved into static. But it wasn't coming from an enemy begging for mercy. It wasn't a rival pleading for his life. It was a 7-year-old girl calling the only phone number she knew, a number scrawled in messy handwriting on a crumpled piece of paper that Rosa from the bakery had pressed into her palm 1 week ago. "If you're ever in real danger," Rosa had whispered, kneeling down to meet her eyes, "call this number. Don't call the police. Call this number." Emma Sullivan had memorized those words. She'd repeated them to herself every night like a prayer, hiding the paper inside her mother's old phone, the only thing she had left of the woman who used to sing her to sleep. Tonight, she finally understood what real danger meant. 11:52 p.m., Chicago. Snow fell thick and silent outside, blanketing the city in white, while darkness lived and breathed in other places. In a private conference room on the 43rd floor of a building that didn't officially exist, Marcus Blackwood sat at the head of a mahogany table. 6 men surrounded him, his capos, his lieutenants, the inner circle of an empire built on blood and silence. They called him the Ghost, not because he was invisible, because the people who saw his face rarely lived to describe it. At 37, Marcus Blackwood controlled the entire south side of Chicago. His legitimate businesses, restaurants, real estate, a chain of bakeries, were merely the surface. Beneath that surface lay something darker, something that had made grown men weep at the mention of his name. "The shipment arrives Tuesday," Victor Reyes was saying. "If we move it through the Marcus's phone buzzed. Not his regular phone, not his business phone, his private line. Only 5 people in the world had that number, and none of them would call at this hour unless someone was dying." He raised one finger. Victor stopped mid-sentence. The room went silent. Marcus looked at the screen. "Unknown number," he answered. "Please, I don't want to die." The voice hit him like a bullet to the chest. Small, trembling, wet with tears that were being swallowed back. A child's voice, a little girl's voice. And for one horrifying second, Marcus heard another voice layered beneath it, a voice from 22 years ago. A voice that still screamed in his nightmares. "Lily, who is this?" His own voice came out strange, hoarse. I'm Emma, from the bakery. Rosa gave me this number. She said to call if." The words dissolved into a muffled sob. Marcus gripped the phone tighter. "Emma, tell me what happened." "She hit me, with the metal thing, the hanger, because I ate Tyler's bread. I didn't mean to. I was so hungry. I'm always so hungry." "Where are you right now?" "The basement. She locked me down here. But I have my mommy's phone. She doesn't know I have it. Please. There's blood on my shoulder. It won't stop." Marcus stood up so fast his chair crashed backward. Every capo in the room stared. In 15 years, none of them had ever seen the Ghost lose his composure. Not when rivals betrayed him, not when bullets flew past his head, not when he buried his own father. But now something shifted in those cold gray eyes. Something cracked open. "Emma, listen to me very carefully." His voice dropped low, steady, the voice he used when lives hung in the balance. "I'm coming to get you. Do not hang up. Do you understand? You're coming?" "I'm coming." A pause. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. People always say that. They never come. Marcus was already walking toward the door, his coat in his hand, his keys in his pocket. "I'm not people," he said. "I'm the Ghost. And I've never broken a promise in my life." Behind him, Victor called out, "Boss, the meeting. Find me her address," Marcus said without turning around. "Now. I want it in 2 minutes or someone loses a hand." The door slammed behind him, and in a frozen basement on the other side of Chicago, a 7-year-old girl clutched a dead woman's phone to her bleeding chest and waited for a monster to come save her from the other monsters. She didn't know that the monster who answered was about to become something else entirely. She didn't know that her voice, small, broken, desperate, had just reached into a man's chest and touched something he thought he'd buried 22 years ago. She didn't know that tonight, everything would change. For both of them. The elevator descended 43 floors in silence. Marcus kept the phone pressed to his ear, listening to Emma's ragged breathing. Each inhale was shallow, pained, the breathing of a child trying not to cry because crying made things worse. He knew that breathing. He'd heard it before. "Emma," he said, stepping into the underground garage. "Tell me more. Who hurt you?" Silence. "Emma? I'm sorry." Her voice cracked. "I shouldn't have called. I'm bothering you. I'm sorry. I'll hang up now. Don't." The word came out sharper than he intended. He softened it immediately, something he hadn't done in 20 years. "Don't hang up. Talk to me. Tell me what happened." Another pause. Then, hesitantly, "You're not mad?" "No. Adults get mad when I talk. I'm not like other adults." He heard her shift. A small whimper escaped the wound on her shoulder must have pulled. "My stepmother," Emma whispered. "Victoria, she doesn't like me. She never liked me. Not since she married Daddy." Marcus unlocked his Bentley. The headlights flashed in the darkness. "What did she do tonight?" "Tyler left bread on his plate. He always leaves food. He never finishes anything. And I was hungry. I'm always hungry because I only get to eat once a day. So I ate the bread, just the little pieces he didn't want." Marcus's jaw tightened. "She saw me. She got the hanger, the metal one from her closet. She hit me, on my shoulder, on my back. She said I was a thief. She said thieves don't deserve food. She said I was lucky she didn't call the police." The engine roared to life. "Then she locked me in the basement. She said I could stay there until I learned to stop stealing." Marcus pulled out of the garage, tires screeching against concrete. And that's when the memory hit him. 3 months ago. Rosa Martinez, the manager of Lily's Bakery, the shop Marcus had named after his dead sister, had mentioned something during a routine report. "There's a girl," Rosa had said carefully. "A little girl. She stands outside the window every day, watches the bread. Never begs, never asks. Just watches." Marcus had barely looked up from his paperwork. "Get rid of her. I don't want beggars making customers uncomfortable. Sir, she's just a child. She looks—" I said, "Get rid of her." Rosa had nodded. "Yes, sir." But Rosa hadn't obeyed. Rosa had done something else entirely. Marcus gripped the steering wheel. That girl, the one Rosa had reported, the one he'd dismissed without a second thought. This was that girl. "Emma," he said slowly. "You know Rosa? From the bakery?" "Yes." A tiny spark of warmth entered her voice. "She's nice. She gives me bread sometimes, when no one's looking. She told me not to tell anyone. She gave you my number. She said you help people. She said you're scary, but you help people who need it. She said if I ever needed help really badly, I should call." Marcus closed his eyes for 1 second. Rosa had disobeyed a direct order. She'd kept feeding a child he'd told her to send away. And then, knowing exactly what kind of man he was, she'd given that child his private number. She'd trusted him with a 7-year-old girl's life. He didn't know whether to fire her or give her a raise. His phone buzzed. "Victor. Sullivan Residence. 1427 Maple Drive. Suburbs. Nice neighborhood. Husband is David Sullivan, owns a chain of electronics stores. Wife is Victoria Sullivan, maiden name Hartley. 1 son from her previous marriage. Name's Tyler, 12 years old. The girl, Emma Sullivan, 7, daughter of David and his first wife Claire. Claire died of cancer 3 years ago. David remarried 8 months later." Marcus memorized the address. "Boss." Victor hesitated. "You want backup? I can have 4 men there in 15 minutes. "No, this isn't a one-man job. If something goes wrong," I said no. The line went dead. Marcus accelerated. The Bentley cut through falling snow like a black blade through white silk. Streetlights blurred past. The city thinned into suburbs. Houses grew larger, lawns grew wider, and the darkness between them grew deeper. 1427 Maple Drive. A nice neighborhood, a nice house, a nice family. And somewhere in that nice house, in a basement without windows, a 7-year-old girl was bleeding alone in the dark. "I'm coming," Marcus thought. His hands were steady on the wheel. His heartbeat was calm. But somewhere beneath that iron control, something ancient was waking up. Something that remembered another little girl with blue eyes. Something that remembered failing her. Not this time. The Bentley's engine screamed through the night. And the ghost drove toward the light of a life he didn't know he was about to change, his own included. 1427 Maple Drive looked exactly like paradise. A 2-story colonial with cream-colored siding. A manicured lawn dusted with fresh snow. A wreath on the front door. Christmas lights strung along the gutters. Dark now, but ready to shine for the neighbors come morning. The perfect American home. Marcus parked the Bentley 2 houses down. He stepped out into the cold, his breath forming clouds in the frozen air. The street was silent. Every window dark, every family asleep, dreaming safe dreams behind locked doors. They had no idea what lived next door. He moved like smoke through the shadows. 22 years of surviving in the underworld had taught him how to become invisible when he needed to be. His footsteps made no sound. His silhouette left no trace. The front door had a security system. The back door did not. Marcus picked the lock in 8 seconds. The house was dark, silent. It smelled like pine air freshener and something else underneath something sour. Alcohol. He found David Sullivan first. The man was passed out on the living room sofa, An empty whiskey bottle on the floor beside him. His mouth hung open. His shirt was stained. He didn't stir when Marcus walked past him. Pathetic, Marcus thought. Your daughter is bleeding in the basement, and you're drowning in a bottle. He moved toward the stairs. A floorboard creaked above him. Victoria shifting in her sleep, probably. He paused, listened, then continued. The basement door was in the kitchen. A padlock hung from the outside. A padlock. They had padlocked their 7-year-old daughter in the basement like an animal. Marcus removed the lock silently. He opened the door. A narrow staircase descended into blackness. No light switch on the wall. No windows below. Just a rectangle of absolute dark and the faint smell of mold and something metallic. Blood. He descended. The basement was worse than he'd imagined. Concrete floor, concrete walls. No insulation, no heating vent. The temperature down here was barely above freezing. In one corner sat a thin mattress, not even a mattress, really. A foam pad. The kind you'd use for camping. Stained, torn, placed directly on the cold floor. Beside it, a plastic bucket, a toilet. They'd given her a bucket for a toilet. No blanket, no pillow, no toys, no books. Nothing that suggested a child lived here. Nothing that suggested a child could live here. And in the far corner, pressed against the wall like she was trying to disappear into it, Emma. She was so small. That was the first thing that hit him. She was 7 years old, but her body was the size of a 4-year-old's. Malnutrition had stolen years from her growth. Her arms were thin as sticks. Her collarbone jutted out sharply beneath her torn nightgown. She was clutching an old phone to her chest, her mother's phone, the one she'd called him from. Her eyes were huge in her gaunt face, blue and terrified, fixed on the shadow descending the stairs. And then she raised her hands. Not in greeting, not in hope. She raised them to cover her face. She was waiting to be hit. The gesture broke something inside Marcus that he didn't know still existed. He stopped moving. He was still 6 feet away from her, still half hidden in shadow. He could see her trembling from here, could see the dark stains spreading across the shoulder of her nightgown, where the wound was still bleeding. Bruises covered her arms purple, yellow, green. Old ones layered over new ones. A scar ran along the side of her neck. Faded but unmistakable. Burn mark. Someone had put something hot against her skin and left it there. And her eyes. Blue eyes. Bright blue eyes. Lily's eyes. For one terrible moment, Marcus couldn't breathe. He saw his sister. 6 years old. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. Laughing in the garden. Calling his name. Reaching for him. Then gone. Gone forever. He blinked. The vision cleared. This wasn't Lily. This was Emma. And Emma was still alive. Marcus did something he hadn't done in 22 years. He knelt. His knees touched the cold concrete floor. He made himself small as a man of 6'3" could make himself. He kept his hands visible, open, unthreatening. Emma, he said softly. It's me, the man from the phone. She peeked through her fingers. Her whole body was shaking. You came? I told you I would. People say that. They don't mean it. I meant it. Slowly, she lowered her hands. Her eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, looking for the trick, looking for the moment when he would transform into another adult who hurt her. Marcus didn't move. He let her look. I'm going to take you away from here, he said. I'm going to take you somewhere safe, somewhere warm, somewhere no one will ever hurt you again. Emma's lip trembled. You're not going to hit me? No. Promise? I promise. Victoria promised too. When she first came, she promised she'd be nice. Marcus held her gaze, steady, unwavering. I'm not Victoria. I'm not like anyone you've ever met, and I don't break my promises. Ever. A single tear rolled down Emma's cheek. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. Marcus held out his hand. But you won't be scared forever. Not anymore. Emma looked at his hand, then at his face, then at his hand again. And slowly, so slowly it broke his heart, she reached out and took it. Her fingers were ice cold, fragile, tiny. Marcus closed his hand around hers as gently as if he were holding a baby bird. Let's go, he said. Emma's hand felt like a bundle of frozen twigs in his palm. Marcus stood slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. The girl watched him with those enormous blue eyes, still waiting, still expecting the trick, still bracing for the moment when kindness would transform into cruelty. She'd learned that lesson too many times. Can you walk? He asked. Emma nodded, but when she tried to stand, her legs buckled. She caught herself against the wall, wincing as the movement pulled at her wounded shoulder. She was too weak, Too starved. Too broken. Marcus didn't hesitate. He shrugged off his cashmere coat, a $3,000 coat, custom tailored in Milan, and wrapped it around Emma's skeletal frame. The fabric swallowed her completely. She looked like a ghost drowning in black wool. She stared up at him, confused. "It's warm," she whispered. "That's the idea. But it's yours. Now it's yours." Emma's chin trembled, not from cold this time. She was trying desperately not to cry, and Marcus understood why. In her world, crying meant punishment. Crying meant weakness. Crying meant giving them another reason to hurt her. He bent down and lifted her into his arms. She weighed nothing. A 7-year-old child should not weigh nothing. A 7-year-old child should be heavy with life, with energy, with all the food and love and safety that childhood was supposed to provide. Emma Sullivan weighed less than the body armor Marcus kept in his trunk. She stiffened at first, muscles locked, breath held, every nerve prepared for pain. Then, gradually, she softened. Her small hand clutched the lapel of his shirt. Her head rested against his shoulder. She didn't relax. Children like her didn't know how to relax. But she stopped fighting. It was a start. Marcus climbed the basement stairs with Emma in his arms. The kitchen was still dark. The house was still silent. He was 3 steps from the back door when "Who the hell are you?" The lights blazed on. Victoria Sullivan stood in the kitchen doorway, a butcher knife clutched in her manicured hand. Her silk robe billowed around her. Her blonde hair was wild from sleep, her face twisted with rage. "Put her down. Put my daughter down right now." Emma buried her face in Marcus's chest. Her whole body began to shake. "Please," she whimpered. "Please don't let her take me back. Please." Marcus turned slowly. He looked at Victoria Sullivan. He looked at the knife in her hand. He looked at the expensive robe, the diamond ring, the perfect highlights in her hair. He looked at the woman who had beaten a 7-year-old with a metal hanger and locked her in a freezing basement to bleed alone in the dark. He said nothing. Victoria's eyes narrowed, then widened, then went completely white. She recognized him. Everyone in Chicago's underworld knew that face. The gray eyes like winter storms, the scar along the jawline, the absolute stillness of a predator who never needed to rush because his prey had nowhere to run. "Oh God," Victoria breathed. You're the ghost." Marcus still said nothing. The knife trembled in Victoria's hand. Her bravado crumbled like wet paper. This wasn't a burglar she could threaten. This wasn't a social worker she could manipulate. This was Marcus Blackwood, the man who had made 3 rival families disappear in a single night. The man whose name mothers whispered to frightened children. The knife clattered to the floor. I can explain," Victoria stammered. "The girl is troubled. She lies. She hurts herself. I was only trying to... What's going on?" David Sullivan stumbled into the kitchen, still drunk, still half asleep. He saw his wife. He saw the stranger. He saw his daughter wrapped in a stranger's coat, clinging to the stranger's chest. "Emma? What? Who?" He looked at Marcus. The blood drained from his face. "Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus Christ. David, call the police!" Victoria shrieked. "He's kidnapping her. Call the police!" David didn't move. His hands shook. His legs shook. He looked at his daughter's face, the terror there, the desperate hope, and something flickered in his bloodshot eyes. Guilt. He knew. Somewhere beneath the alcohol and the cowardice, he knew exactly what had been happening in his own house. He knew. And he'd done nothing. Marcus looked at both of them. Husband and wife. Abuser and enabler. 2 people who had transformed a child's life into a living hell. He could kill them both right now. It would be easy. It would be justified. No court in the underworld would convict him. But Emma was watching. Emma was pressed against his chest, her heart hammering, her eyes squeezed shut, waiting to see what kind of monster had saved her from the other monsters. Marcus made a choice. He turned toward the door. He shifted Emma's weight in his arms, making sure she was secure, making sure she was warm. And over his shoulder, he spoke the only words he would give them tonight. "I'll be back to discuss this with you, both of you." He walked out into the snow. Behind him, Victoria began to scream. Marcus kept walking. The Bentley waited at the curb, engine still warm. He placed Emma gently in the passenger seat, buckled her in, adjusted the coat around her shoulders. She watched him with those shattered blue eyes. "She's going to be so angry," Emma whispered. "When I go back, she's going to be so angry." Marcus started the car. "You're never going back." The Bentley pulled away from the curb, leaving 1427 Maple Drive behind, leaving the nightmare behind. Emma Sullivan didn't know it yet, but her old life had just ended, and something new, something terrifying and beautiful and completely unknown had just begun. Marcus didn't take Emma to a hospital. Hospitals meant questions. Hospitals meant paperwork. Hospitals meant police reports and social workers, and a system that had already failed this child once before. He knew a better place. The clinic sat in the basement of an unremarkable building in Chinatown. No sign on the door, no listing in any directory. Just a steel entrance that opened only for those who knew the code. Dr. Helen Cho had saved Marcus's life 10 years ago. 3 bullets in his chest, no hospital willing to touch him, bleeding out in the back of a van. She'd worked for 9 hours straight, pulled the lead from his organs, stitched him back together, and never asked a single question. She never asked questions. That was her gift. Tonight, Marcus carried Emma through the unmarked door at 1:47 in the morning. The girl had fallen asleep during the drive, exhaustion finally overwhelming her fear. She stirred when the warm air of the clinic hit her face, but didn't wake. Dr. Cho appeared within seconds. Mid-50s. Silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. Reading glasses perched on her nose. She took one look at the bundle in Marcus's arms, and her expression shifted from surprise to something harder. "Exam room 2, she said. "Now." Marcus laid Emma on the examination table as gently as he could. The girl's eyes fluttered open, panic flashing across her face before she remembered where she was. "It's okay," Marcus said. "This is Dr. Cho. She's going to help you." Emma looked at the doctor, then at the medical instruments, then back at Marcus. "Will it hurt?" "Maybe a little, but she'll be gentle, I promise." Dr. Cho pulled on latex gloves. "I need to examine her wounds. You should wait outside." Marcus hesitated. Emma's hand shot out, grabbing his sleeve. "Don't go. I'll be right outside the door. I'm not leaving. Promise?" "Promise." He gently detached her fingers from his sleeve and stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind him, and then he waited. The examination took 43 minutes. Marcus stood motionless the entire time, his back against the wall, his eyes fixed on the closed door. His phone buzzed twice, Victor, checking in, but he didn't answer. He could hear Dr. Cho's voice through the door, soft, calm, asking Emma to lift her arm, to turn around, to tell her if something hurt. He couldn't hear Emma's responses. They were too quiet. Finally, the door opened. Dr. Cho stepped out. She closed the door behind her, and when she looked at Marcus, her face was pale. "Well?" he asked. Dr. Cho removed her glasses, cleaned them, put them back on, a nervous habit she only showed when something had shaken her. 3 ribs, she began, healed incorrectly. They were broken at least a year ago, maybe longer, never treated. She must have been in agony for weeks. Marcus's jaw tightened. "There's a burn scar on her right wrist. Old. Looks like someone pressed something hot against her skin and held it there. A curling iron, maybe. Or a cigarette lighter." His hands curled into fists. "The wound on her shoulder is deep. I had to put in 7 stitches. It'll scar." Dr. Cho paused. "There are older scars on her back, faded, but visible, consistent with being struck by a belt or a cord." "What else?" "Severe malnutrition. She's significantly underweight for her age, probably been underfed for years. And there are signs of vitamin D deficiency, pale skin, weakness, bone tenderness. She hasn't been exposed to sunlight regularly, because they kept her in the basement." "Yes." Dr. Cho met his eyes. "Marcus, this child has been systematically abused for at least 2 to 3 years, possibly longer. What happened tonight wasn't an isolated incident. It was routine." Marcus said nothing. His knuckles had gone white. "Who is she?" "Her name is Emma." "And who is she to you?" The question hung in the air. Marcus didn't have an answer. 12 hours ago, Emma Sullivan had been nobody to him. A name he'd never heard. A face he'd never seen. A life that had nothing to do with his. Now she was sleeping in an exam room with 7 stitches in her shoulder, and he couldn't imagine letting her go. "She's mine now," he said quietly. "That's all that matters." "Doctor." Cho studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "She's asking for you, and she asked me something I couldn't answer." "What?" She asked if she has to go back. Marcus pushed past her and opened the door. Emma was sitting up on the exam table, her shoulder bandaged, her small body swimming in a hospital gown. She looked up when he entered. "Dr. Cho fixed me," she said. "I know. It only hurt a little. You were very brave." Emma twisted her fingers together. The question was written all over her face, but she was too afraid to ask it again. Marcus crossed the room. He crouched down until he was eye level with her. "You're never going back," he said. "Do you understand me?" "Never." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "But where will I go?" Marcus took her small hand in his. "Home," he said. "You're coming home with me." Victor Reyes arrived at the clinic at 3:17 in the morning. He carried a manila folder thick with documents, phone records, financial statements, police reports, photographs, everything Marcus had demanded, delivered in under 4 hours. Victor was efficient. It was why he'd survived 15 years as Marcus's right hand. Emma was asleep in the exam room, sedated lightly to help her rest. Dr. Cho sat with her, monitoring her vitals. Marcus stood in the hallway, arms crossed, waiting. "Talk," he said. Victor opened the folder. Victoria Sullivan. Maiden name, Victoria Hartley. 41 years old, born in Milwaukee. Moved to Chicago 12 years ago. He flipped a page. She's been married 3 times. 3. And here's where it gets interesting. Victor laid out 2 photographs. 2 men, both smiling, both dead. Husband number 1, Richard Malloy, investment banker, married Victoria when she was 23, died 2 years later, drowned in his bathtub. Victor's voice was flat. Official ruling. Accident. He'd been drinking heavily. Case closed. Marcus said nothing. Husband number 2, Stephen Porter, real estate developer, married Victoria when she was 28, died 18 months later, fell down the stairs in their home, broke his neck. Victor flipped another page. Official ruling. Accident. He'd been drinking heavily. Case closed. Drinking heavily. That's what the reports say. Both times. Marcus's eyes narrowed. And both times, she inherited everything. Malloy left her $400,000. Porter left her close to $1 million. She burned through most of it within a few years. Expensive tastes, but it set a pattern. She marries wealthy men. They die. She inherits. That's the theory. Nothing was ever proven. No charges filed. She's clean on paper. Victor laid out a 3rd photograph. David Sullivan. Alive, but barely a man hollowed out by grief and alcohol, captured at what looked like a company event. His eyes were empty. His smile was mechanical. Husband number 3, David Sullivan, owns a chain of electronics stores across the Midwest. Sullivan's Electronics. 16 locations. Net worth somewhere around $8 million, most of it tied up in the business and property. She's after his money. Has to be. She married him 8 months after his first wife died. Claire Sullivan. Cancer. Quick and brutal diagnosis to death in 4 months. Victor paused. From what I can gather, David fell apart completely. Started drinking. Stopped running the business. His sister manages most of it now. He just exists. And Victoria saw an opportunity. A grieving widower with money and a young daughter. Perfect target. Marcus looked at the photograph of David Sullivan. Pathetic. Weak. A man who had abandoned his child to chase his own oblivion. But Victoria was something else entirely. Victoria was a predator. What about the son? Marcus asked. Tyler. Victor pulled another document. Tyler Hartley, 12 years old. Victoria's son from her first marriage. Kid has a record, not criminal. Not yet, but close. Expelled from 2 schools for violent behavior. Beat up a classmate badly enough to send the kid to the hospital. Victoria paid the family off. Made it disappear. He learned from his mother. Apple doesn't fall far. Marcus turned away. Processing. 3 husbands. 2 dead. 1 drinking himself into the grave. A violent son. A woman who had perfected the art of appearing innocent while destroying everyone around her. And Emma trapped in the middle of it all. What about the neighbors? He asked. Someone must have noticed something. Victor nodded. One person did. An elderly woman named Martha Hendricks. Lives 2 houses down. She called Child Protective Services about 14 months ago. Said she heard crying coming from the Sullivan basement. Constant crying, sometimes screaming, and CPS sent a caseworker. Victoria met them at the door. Explained that Emma had severe psychological issues, self-harm, violent episodes, delusions. Said she had to be isolated for her own safety. Said they were working with specialists. They believed her. She showed them a bedroom. Clean, bright, full of toys. She showed them Emma cleaned up, dressed nicely, coached to say the right things. Victor's jaw tightened. The caseworker closed the file. No further action required. Marcus stood very still. The system had found Emma. The system had looked directly at her, and the system had walked away, satisfied by a performance in a pretty room that the child probably never saw except when she needed to be displayed. They had failed her. Everyone had failed her. Her father, the neighbors, the authorities. Every single adult who should have protected her had either looked away or been fooled by a monster in designer clothing. Boss. Victor's voice was careful. What do you want to do? Marcus turned around. His eyes had changed. Victor had seen those eyes before in warehouses at midnight, in back rooms where deals went wrong, in the moments before someone stopped breathing. But this was different. This wasn't the cold calculation of business. This was something older, something hotter. This was rage given human form. "I want her destroyed," Marcus said quietly. "Not killed, destroyed. I want her to lose everything she ever stole. I want her to rot in a cell. I want her to know that a 7-year-old girl she tortured for 3 years is the reason her entire life is ending." Victor nodded slowly. "That's not usually how we do things. It is now." Marcus looked toward the exam room door, where Emma was sleeping under Dr. Cho's watch. A child who had been starved, beaten, burned, and locked in darkness. A child who had learned to stop crying because crying made things worse. A child who still asked permission to eat. "Find me everything," Marcus said. "Every secret, every lie, every body she's buried, and find me a way to bring her down that doesn't involve a bullet." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you care about method?" Marcus met his gaze. "Since tonight." The Blackwood estate sat behind 12-foot walls in the most exclusive neighborhood in Chicago. No one entered without invitation. No one left without permission. The grounds were patrolled by men who carried weapons and asked no questions. The security system cost more than most houses. It was a fortress built for a king of the underworld, and tonight it welcomed a 7-year-old girl. Emma woke when the car stopped. She blinked at the window, confusion clouding her face. Then she saw the mansion, 3 stories of stone and glass, lit from within like a palace in a fairy tale. Her eyes went wide. "Whose house is this?" "Marcus killed the engine. Mine, and now yours." "I don't understand." "You will." He carried her inside. She was still too weak to walk far, still wrapped in his coat like a child playing dress-up in her father's clothes. The front doors opened before they reached them, heavy oak, carved with patterns she didn't recognize. And standing in the entrance hall, waiting, was Elena. Elena Vasquez had served the Blackwood family for 37 years. She had changed Marcus's diapers. She had bandaged his childhood scrapes. She had held him when his mother died, and again when his father followed. She had watched him transform from a grieving boy into the man they called the Ghost, and she had buried Lily. Now she stood in the foyer at 4 a.m, summoned by a single text message. "Prepare a room. Child, 7 years old, coming home." She hadn't asked questions. She never did. But when Marcus walked through the door with the girl in his arms, Elena understood everything. Blonde hair, blue eyes, thin as paper, broken in ways that showed and ways that didn't. Elena's heart cracked open. "This is Emma," Marcus said. "She's staying with us." Elena stepped forward, her movements slow and gentle. She'd learned long ago how to approach wounded things without frightening them further. "Hello, Emma," she said softly. "My name is Elena. Welcome home." Emma stared at her, then at the marble floors, then at the crystal chandelier hanging above them, scattering light like captured stars. "This is... home?" "It is now, sweetheart." Elena led them upstairs. The room she'd prepared was warm and bright, pale yellow walls, soft white curtains, a bed piled with pillows and blankets. A stuffed bear sat propped against the headboard. Elena had found it in storage, one of Lily's old toys, preserved for 2 decades in a box Marcus had never been able to open. Emma stopped in the doorway. She looked at the bed like it might bite her. "Go on," Elena encouraged. "It's for you." Emma didn't move, her small hands twisted together. Her eyes darted around the room, cataloging exits, measuring threats. "What if I make it dirty?" she whispered. Elena's breath caught. "The bed?" "Yes. What if I make it dirty? Will I be punished?" Elena knelt down, bringing herself to Emma's level. Her old knees protested, but she ignored them. "Listen to me, child. Beds are for sleeping. That's all. You can jump on it. You can spill things on it. You can sleep sideways if you want. No one will ever punish you for using a bed the way it's meant to be used." Emma looked at her, then at the bed, then back at Elena. She didn't move. She just stood there, frozen in the center of the room, waiting for instructions, waiting to be told what to do, waiting the way abused children always waited, alert, anxious, ready to obey. Marcus watched from the doorway. His chest ached. He remembered Lily at 7. Lily had never stood still. Lily had bounced on beds and twirled through rooms and laughed at everything and nothing. Lily had been motion and noise and light. Emma was silence. Emma was stillness. Emma was a statue of a child, broken so many times that she'd forgotten how to move without permission. "Elena," Marcus said quietly, "help her get cleaned up. I'll be in my study." Elena nodded. She understood. He couldn't watch anymore. Not yet. Not when every second reminded him of what Lily had been and what Emma had become. Elena ran a bath. The water was warm. The bubbles were lavender-scented. A stack of clean towels sat waiting. Everything was soft and gentle and safe. Emma stood beside the tub, staring at the steam rising from the water. "It's warm," she said. "Of course it's warm. Victoria only let me use cold water. She said hot water cost money. She said I wasn't worth hot water." Elena closed her eyes briefly, drew a breath, opened them again. "You are worth every drop of hot water in this house," she said firmly. "Now get in before it cools." Emma undressed with mechanical movements practiced, efficient, careful. When Elena saw the scars on her back, the bruises on her ribs, the way her bones jutted against her skin, she had to turn away. She busied herself folding towels. She would not cry, not in front of the child. The child needed strength, not tears. Emma slipped into the water. For a moment, nothing happened. She just sat there, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped around herself, small and still and silent. Then her shoulders began to shake. Then the tears came, great, heaving sobs that seemed too big for her body, tears that had been locked away for years. Finally breaking free, she cried into the warm water, into the lavender steam, into the safety she didn't yet understand. Elena sat on the edge of the tub. She didn't speak. She didn't touch. She just stayed. Because sometimes that was all you could do. Just stay. Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, staring at documents he wasn't reading, turning over plans he couldn't focus on. The clock on his desk ticked past 1, then 2, then 3. The house was silent. Elena had retired hours ago. The guards patrolled the perimeter in their usual rotations. Everything was secure. Everything was under control, except for the girl sleeping 2 doors down. At 3:14, Marcus heard it. A soft thump. Then silence. Then another thump, the sound of something small hitting the floor. He was on his feet before he realized he'd moved. Emma's door was slightly open. A nightlight glowed in the corner, casting soft shadows across the walls. Marcus pushed the door wider and looked inside. The bed was empty. His heart stopped. For one terrible second she ran. She left. Someone took her before his eyes adjusted and found her. She was on the floor, curled into a tight ball beside the bed, her knees pulled to her chest, her arms wrapped around herself. The blanket Elena had tucked around her lay abandoned on the mattress above. The stuffed bear had fallen beside her. She looked up when his shadow crossed the light. Fear flashed across her face, then recognition, then something else, something that wasn't quite relief but wasn't quite terror either. "I'm sorry," she whispered immediately. "I'm sorry. I'll get back in bed. Please don't be angry." Marcus stepped into the room. He moved slowly, the way he might approach a wounded animal. "I'm not angry. I tried to stay. I really tried. But it's too..." She trailed off, struggling for words. "Too what?" "Too soft. The bed. It's too soft. I kept thinking I was falling. I kept waiting to hit the bottom, and it never came." Marcus understood then. 3 years on a thin foam pad on a concrete floor. 3 years of cold and hardness and nothing gentle touching her skin. Of course a real bed felt wrong. Of course comfort felt like danger. She had been conditioned to expect pain. Softness had become a threat. Marcus did something then that surprised even himself. He sat down on the floor. Not in a chair. Not on the edge of the bed. On the floor, his back against the wall. His legs stretched out in front of him. The most powerful man in Chicago's underworld, sitting on the carpet in a child's bedroom at 3 in the morning. Emma stared at him. "What are you doing?" "Sitting." "On the floor?" "You're on the floor. Seems like the right place to be." She didn't know how to respond to that. Her small brow furrowed. She watched him with those enormous blue eyes, searching for the trap, waiting for the mask to slip. Marcus didn't move. He didn't reach for her. He just sat there, breathing, existing, letting the silence settle around them like snow. Minutes passed. Finally, Emma spoke. "Are you going to hit me?" "No. Ever? Never." Victoria said that too. Her voice was small, tired, ancient with disappointment. The first week, she was so nice. She bought me ice cream. She brushed my hair. She said she would love me like a real daughter. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. Then she changed. Emma continued. "They always change. First they're nice, then they're not. That's how it works." She wasn't looking at him now. She was staring at her hands, picking at the hem of her nightgown. "Maybe you'll change too." Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to promise her that he was different, that he would never hurt her, that she was safe now and forever. But he'd spent 22 years learning that words were cheap. Anyone could make promises. Monsters made promises all the time. So instead of speaking, he stayed silent. He just sat there, breathing steadily, not moving closer, not reaching out, not demanding anything from her. He let the quiet do what words couldn't. I'm here. I'm not leaving. I won't hurt you. The clock ticked. The nightlight hummed. Outside, snow continued to fall on a sleeping city. Somewhere in that stillness, Emma's eyes grew heavy. Her breathing slowed. The tension in her small body began to ease. She fell asleep on the floor, curled up like a comma, one hand still clutching the fallen teddy bear. Marcus reached up and pulled the blanket from the bed. Carefully. So carefully. He draped it over her. She stirred but didn't wake. Her fingers tightened around the bear's paw. He didn't carry her to the bed. She wasn't ready for that. Instead, he stayed where he was, back against the wall, legs stretched out, eyes on the girl who had called him at midnight and changed everything. He watched over her until dawn. The first rays of sunlight were creeping through the curtains when Elena found them, Emma asleep on the floor, Marcus sitting guard beside her, neither having moved for hours. Elena said nothing. She just nodded once, her eyes bright with something that might have been tears, and went to make breakfast. And Marcus realized, as the morning light filled the room, that for the first time in 22 years, he felt something other than cold. He felt purpose, not power, not control, not vengeance, something simpler, something older, the need to protect. Rosa Martinez arrived at the Blackwood estate at 9 a.m. She came alone, as instructed. She came trembling, as expected. When the guards escorted her through the iron gates, up the winding driveway, and into the marble foyer, her face was the color of old paper. People who received summons from Marcus Blackwood did not always return. Rosa knew this. Everyone knew this. She'd worked at Lily's bakery for 11 years. She'd kept her head down, done her job, never asked questions about the men who came and went, or the conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. She was a good employee, a quiet employee, and then she'd disobeyed a direct order. She'd fed a starving child instead of chasing her away. She'd given that child the most dangerous phone number in Chicago. Now she was standing in the home of the ghost, waiting to learn if that kindness would cost her life. Marcus received her in his study. He sat behind his desk, dressed in a dark suit, his face unreadable. The morning light cut sharp angles across his features. He looked every inch the monster the city believed him to be. Rosa stood before him, hands clasped, eyes down. "You know why you're here," Marcus said. "Yes, sir. You disobeyed me." "Yes, sir. I told you to get rid of the girl. You didn't. You fed her instead, for months. And then you gave her my private number." Rosa's hands were shaking. She squeezed them tighter. "Yes, sir." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Tell me everything." Rosa looked up. Confusion flickered across her face. "Sir? The girl. Emma. Tell me everything you know about her. From the beginning." Rosa swallowed. This wasn't what she'd expected. She'd expected anger, punishment, not questions. But she answered. She started appearing about 6 months ago, outside the bakery window. She'd just stand there, for hours, watching the bread. Did she beg? Never. Not once. She never asked for anything. She just watched, like she'd forgotten that food was something you could actually eat. Marcus's jaw tightened. The first time I gave her something, it was just crumbs. Bread we were going to throw away anyway. Stale. Hard. Rosa's voice cracked. She ate it like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. She ate it so fast I thought she would choke. And after that, I started saving things for her. Rolls that didn't sell. Broken cookies. Whatever I could sneak out without anyone noticing. She came every day. Same time. Same spot. Like it was the only good thing in her life. Marcus said nothing. He waited. Rosa continued. Sometimes she talked to me. Little bits. Nothing complete. She told me her name was Emma. She told me she lived with her stepmother. She told me she wasn't allowed to go to school because she was too stupid to learn. She's not stupid. I know. I could see it in her eyes. She's sharp, quick, but someone had convinced her she was worthless. Rosa's voice trembled. She told me she had to clean the house every day, that she slept somewhere cold, that she got hit when she made mistakes. Rosa wiped her eyes. I wanted to call the police. I begged her to let me call someone, but she said no. She said if anyone found out, they would hurt her worse. She said it had happened before. CPS? Marcus said flatly. Yes. She said people came once, asked questions, looked around, then left. And after they left, her stepmother beat her so badly she couldn't walk for 2 days. The silence in the room grew heavy. Marcus's hands rested on the desk. They were perfectly still, but Rosa could see the tension in his shoulders, the controlled fury beneath the surface. "Why did you give her my number?" Rosa met his eyes for the first time. "Because I knew what you were capable of. Everyone knows. And I thought maybe the only person who could save her was someone the system couldn't stop. Someone her stepmother couldn't manipulate." She took a shaky breath. "I know you don't care about children. I know this isn't your world. But that number was the only thing I could give her. The only chance she had." Rosa's voice broke. "I'm sorry I disobeyed you. I'll accept whatever punishment you decide, but I couldn't chase her away. I couldn't let her starve. She was just a little girl." Tears streamed down her face now. She was just a little girl, and nobody was helping her. Marcus stood. Rosa flinched, bracing herself. He walked around the desk. He stopped in front of her. And then he did something that Rosa Martinez would remember for the rest of her life. He extended his hand. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. Rosa stared at his hand, then at his face. She didn't understand. "Sir, you disobeyed an order because it was wrong. You protected a child when no one else would. You gave her the only lifeline you had." He paused. "That's not disobedience. That's courage." Rosa took his hand. Her grip was weak. Her whole body was trembling. "She's here now," Marcus continued. "She's safe. Because of you." Rosa collapsed into sobs. Relief, guilt, grief, everything she'd carried for 6 months, the weight of watching a child suffer, of sneaking scraps like a criminal, of praying every night that someone would save Emma before it was too late, it all came pouring out. Marcus let her cry. When she finally composed herself, wiping her face with shaking hands, he spoke again. "You'll keep your job, you'll receive a raise, and if you ever see another child in trouble, you have my permission to do exactly what you did this time." Rosa nodded, unable to speak. "Now go home. Rest. I'll have someone drive you." She turned toward the door, then stopped. "Mr. Blackwood? Yes? Is she okay? Emma?" Marcus thought of the girl sleeping on the floor because beds felt too soft. The girl who asked permission to eat. The girl whose body was a map of scars. "Not yet," he said. "But she will be." The smell of pancakes woke Emma. She lay on the floor for a long moment, confused. The carpet was soft beneath her cheek. Sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains. A stuffed bear was pressed against her chest. Then she remembered. The phone call. The man. The car ride through snow. The big house. The warm bath. It hadn't been a dream. Elena found her sitting up, blinking at the morning light, like a creature emerging from a cave. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep?" Emma nodded slowly. She was still clutching the bear. "Breakfast is ready. Can you walk, or would you like me to carry you?" "I can walk." She followed Elena down the stairs, her bare feet silent on the marble. The house was even larger in daylight. High ceilings, tall windows, rooms that seemed to stretch forever. Emma had never seen anything like it. She felt like an intruder, a dirty thing that had wandered into a palace by mistake. The kitchen was warm and bright. A long wooden table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs with cushioned seats. Copper pots hung from the ceiling. Fresh flowers stood in a vase by the window. And on the table, in front of an empty chair, sat a plate. Emma stopped walking. The plate held pancakes, 3 of them, golden brown, stacked in a perfect tower. Beside the pancakes sat scrambled eggs, fluffy and yellow. Beside the eggs sat strips of bacon, crispy and glistening. A glass of orange juice stood nearby, catching the sunlight like liquid gold. Emma stared. "Go on," Elena said gently. "Sit down." Emma approached the table like it might explode. She climbed into the chair. She looked at the food. She looked at Elena. She looked at the food again. All of this. Her voice was barely a whisper. "This is for me?" Elena's throat tightened. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "All of it?" "All of it." Emma picked up her fork. Her hand trembled slightly. She cut a tiny piece of pancake so small it was almost invisible, and put it in her mouth. Her eyes closed. She chewed slowly, savoring every second, as if she expected someone to rip the plate away at any moment. Marcus entered the kitchen with a newspaper tucked under his arm. He said nothing. He simply sat down across from Emma, unfolded the paper, and pretended to read. His eyes, however, kept drifting over the top of the pages. Emma ate in silence. Each bite was careful, deliberate. She cut her food into impossibly small pieces and consumed them one by one, pausing between each to check her surroundings. She had finished perhaps a third of the plate when she stopped. Her fork clattered down. Her face went pale. Her eyes widened with sudden terror. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I ate too much. I'm sorry. I'll stop now." Marcus lowered the newspaper. "You haven't finished. But I'm only supposed to eat 1/3. That's the rule," Victoria said. What did Victoria say? Emma's hands twisted in her lap. She said, "I only get 1/3 of whatever's on the plate, because I don't deserve more, because food costs money and I don't earn any." She said if I ate more than my share, I was stealing from the family. The kitchen went silent. Elena turned away, pressing her hand to her mouth. Her shoulders shook. Marcus set down the newspaper completely. He leaned forward, his gray eyes fixed on Emma's blue ones. "Look at me." Emma looked. "There are no rules like that in this house. There is no 1/3. There is no earning food. There is no deserving or not deserving." He spoke slowly, clearly, every word deliberate. "In this house, you eat until you are full, not until someone tells you to stop. Not until you've reached some limit, until you are full. Do you understand?" Emma's lip trembled. "But what if I eat too much?" "You won't. But what if Emma—" His voice was firm but not harsh. "You have been starving for years. Your body knows what it needs. Trust it. Eat." She looked at him, then at the plate, then at him again. Something shifted in her eyes, a tiny crack in the wall she'd built around herself. She picked up her fork. She took another bite, and another, and another. She ate the pancakes. She ate the eggs. She ate the bacon. She drank the orange juice in small, careful sips. When the plate was empty, she stared at it like she couldn't believe what she'd done. "I finished," she said quietly. "I ate everything." "Yes," Marcus said. "You did. Am I in trouble?" "No." Emma looked at the empty plate, then at Marcus, then at Elena, who was quietly wiping her eyes by the stove. "Oh," she said. Just that. Just oh. But Marcus heard what she couldn't say yet. "Maybe this is real. Maybe this is safe. Maybe I'm allowed to exist." He returned to his newspaper, hiding his face behind the pages. Because something was happening inside his chest, something warm, something painful, something he hadn't felt in 22 years. The ice was melting, and he didn't know whether to welcome it or run. Victor arrived at the estate that afternoon. He found Marcus in the study, standing by the window, watching Emma play in the garden below. Elena had bundled the girl in a warm coat and set her loose on the snow-covered lawn. She wasn't playing. Exactly, she didn't seem to know how, but she was touching the snow, studying it, letting it melt in her palms like she'd never seen it up close before. "We need to discuss the Sullivan situation," Victor said. Marcus didn't turn around. "Speak." Victor closed the door behind him. He crossed the room and stood beside his boss, following his gaze to the small figure in the garden. "I have a proposal. Clean, simple, efficient. I'm listening. We take care of Victoria and David. Make it look like an accident. Car crash, house fire, carbon monoxide leak. Whatever you prefer." Victor shrugged. "The kid inherits everything through her father's estate. You set up a trust. Install yourself as guardian through the right legal channels. And it's done. No loose ends. No witnesses. No one to contest custody. It was the obvious solution. It was the Mafia solution. 6 months ago, 6 days ago, Marcus would have approved it without hesitation. 2 more bodies meant nothing to a man who had built his empire on a foundation of bones. But now he hesitated. He watched Emma kneel in the snow, her small hands shaping something that might have been a snowball. She was clumsy, uncertain, like a child learning to be a child for the first time. If he killed Victoria and David, what would that make him? The same as them. A monster who solved problems with violence, a shadow that followed Emma for the rest of her life. She would find out eventually. Children always found out. And when she did, she would look at him and see another adult who hurt people when it was convenient. Another abuser wearing a different mask. "No," Marcus said. Victor blinked. "No, we're not killing them. Boss, with respect, they tortured a child for 3 years. They deserve, I know what they deserve." Marcus turned from the window. "But this isn't about what they deserve. It's about what Emma needs." Victor stared at him. In 15 years, he had never heard Marcus Blackwood prioritize anyone's needs over his own judgment. What does Emma need? Justice. Real justice. The kind that doesn't come with blood on its hands. Marcus crossed to his desk and picked up his phone. He scrolled through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't called in over a year. Catherine Wells, federal prosecutor, incorruptible, relentless, and she owed him a debt. Last year, her daughter had been taken by a trafficking ring operating out of the South Side. The police had been useless. The FBI had been slow. Marcus had found the girl in 72 hours, returned her unharmed, and dismantled the ring so thoroughly that no one ever found the pieces. Catherine had never asked what happened to the men responsible. She'd simply taken her daughter home and sent Marcus a bottle of whiskey worth more than most cars. Now it was time to collect. She answered on the second ring. Blackwood, I was wondering when you'd call in that favor. I need your help. Legal help? Yes. A pause. The ghost wants to use the legal system. That's unexpected. There's a child involved, 7 years old, abused for years by her stepmother. I have evidence, medical records, witness testimony, everything you'd need to build a case. And you want me to prosecute? I want you to destroy her. Legally. Publicly. I want her in a cell for the rest of her life. I want her name synonymous with monster. Catherine was quiet for a moment. Why not handle this your way? It would be faster. Marcus looked out the window again. Emma had given up on the snowball. She was lying on her back now, making shapes in the snow with her arms. Angel wings. Because there's a little girl who's going to grow up in my house, and when she asks me how I dealt with the woman who hurt her, I want to tell her the truth. I want to say, we did it right. We did it clean. We let the law handle it. You want to be someone she can look up to. I want to be someone who doesn't add to her nightmares. Another long pause. All right, Catherine said finally. Send me everything you have. But I have conditions. Name them. You cooperate fully with my investigation. You testify if needed. You stay on the right side of the line for the duration of this case. No disappearances. No accidents. Nothing that could compromise the prosecution. Marcus closed his eyes, cooperating with federal law enforcement, testifying in open court, playing by rules he'd spent 22 years breaking. For anyone else, the answer would have been no. But Emma was in the garden, making snow angels, learning how to be a child again. Done, he said. When he hung up, Victor was staring at him like he'd grown a second head. You're working with a federal prosecutor. You, the ghost. Yes. You're going to testify in court, against someone you could eliminate in an afternoon. Yes. Victor shook his head slowly. You've changed, boss. I don't know when it happened, but you're not the same man you were a week ago. Marcus looked at him. I haven't changed. I'm just learning a different way to be strong. What does that mean? Marcus didn't answer. He turned back to the window, watching the girl in the snow, and let the question hang in the air. What did it mean? He wasn't sure yet, but he was going to find out. Victoria Sullivan was not a woman who accepted defeat. Within 48 hours of Marcus taking Emma, she had hired the most expensive defense attorney in Chicago. Within 72 hours, she had filed a police report accusing Marcus Blackwood of kidnapping, breaking and entering, and child endangerment. Within a week, she was crying on television. My baby girl was taken from her bed in the middle of the night. Victoria sat in a television studio, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Her makeup was perfect, just enough smudging to suggest genuine tears. Her voice trembled with practiced grief. A dangerous criminal broke into our home and stole my daughter. The police know who he is. Everyone knows who he is. And yet he walks free while my little girl is trapped in his compound. She looked directly into the camera. Please, if anyone has information, if anyone can help bring Emma home. She must be so scared. She must be wondering why her mommy hasn't come to save her. The interview went viral within hours. The police arrived at the Blackwood estate the following morning. 4 squad cars, 8 officers, 2 detectives. They lined up at the gate like an invading army, badges gleaming, warrants in hand. It was unprecedented. No law enforcement agency had ever dared approach these walls. The Blackwood name carried weight that transcended legal authority. But Victoria had made this public. She had turned it into a media circus. The police had no choice but to act. Marcus met them at the front door. He wore a charcoal suit. His expression was calm. Beside him stood his personal attorney, a silver-haired woman named Margaret Chen, who had successfully defended him against 7 federal indictments. Gentlemen, Marcus said, how can I help you? The lead detective, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, held up a warrant. We're here regarding Emma Sullivan. Her stepmother has filed a kidnapping complaint. I'm aware. We need to see the child, confirm her safety, ask her some questions. Marcus didn't move. The child is safe, safer than she's been in 3 years. However, she's currently with a child psychologist who has advised against any interrogation that might re-traumatize her. We're not here to interrogate, Detective. Margaret Chen stepped forward. My client has documentation proving that Emma Sullivan was the victim of systematic abuse at the hands of Victoria Sullivan. Medical records, photographic evidence of injuries, witness testimony, all of which has already been submitted to the federal prosecutor's office. The detective blinked. Federal prosecutor? Catherine Wells. She's opened an investigation into Mrs. Sullivan. I suggest you contact her office before proceeding. The officers exchanged glances. This was not what they'd expected. We still need to see the girl, the detective insisted. You will, in the presence of her psychologist, her attorney, and a representative from Child Protective Services. Not before. Upstairs, in a windowless room reinforced with steel, Emma sat on a soft couch with Elena beside her. She couldn't hear what was happening below. The room was soundproofed, but she knew something was wrong. She'd seen the police cars through the window before Elena had hurried her away. Why are there police? She asked quietly. Elena hesitated. They just want to make sure you're okay, sweetheart. Is Victoria making them come? Elena couldn't lie to those blue eyes. Yes. Emma's face crumpled. Not into tears, she was too conditioned to cry openly, but into something worse. Resignation. Acceptance of the inevitable. She wants me back. She won't get you back, but she always wins. She always gets what she wants. She's good at pretending. Later that evening, Marcus found Emma in the living room. She was standing in front of the television, frozen. On the screen, a news program was replaying Victoria's tearful interview. My baby girl. Stolen from her bed. So scared. Emma was shaking. Marcus crossed the room in 3 strides and turned off the television. But the damage was done. Emma's face was white. Her hands were trembling. I have to go back, don't I? Her voice was barely audible. She's telling everyone you're bad. She's telling everyone I belong to her. The police believe her. Everyone believes her. Not everyone. But she's crying. She looks like a real mom. People believe crying moms. Marcus knelt down, bringing himself to her level. His gray eyes met her blue ones. Listen to me, Emma. Victoria Sullivan is a liar. She's a performer. She's fooled a lot of people for a long time. But she's not going to fool the people who matter. Not this time. How do you know? Because I have proof of what she did to you. Real proof. Doctors who saw your injuries. People who heard you cry. Evidence she can't lie her way out of. Emma's chin trembled. But what if it's not enough? What if I still have to go back? Marcus took her small hands in his. They were cold. They were shaking. You will never go back to that house. Never. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not ever. You promise? He looked into those shattered blue eyes, eyes that had learned to expect betrayal, eyes that had been lied to by every adult who should have protected her. I promise on my life, he said. You are never going back. Emma stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. She didn't smile. She didn't relax. The fear didn't leave her eyes. But something else entered them, something that might have been the first fragile seed of trust. The house was quiet. Emma had finally fallen asleep, exhausted by fear and confusion. Elena sat in the hallway outside her door, keeping watch. The guards patrolled the grounds in their silent rotations, and Marcus sat alone in his study, staring at a photograph. Lily had been 6 when the picture was taken. Blonde hair, blue eyes. A smile so bright it seemed to radiate from the frame. She was wearing a yellow sundress, standing in the garden of their old house, holding a flower she'd just picked. She'd given that flower to Marcus 5 minutes after the photo was taken. For you, big brother. Because you're the best brother in the whole world. He'd laughed. He'd been 15, too cool for flowers, too busy trying to be tough in front of his father's men. But he'd taken the flower anyway. He'd pressed it in a book. He still had it somewhere, dried and fragile, preserved like a fossil of a life that no longer existed. 3 days after that photograph, Lily was gone. Marcus closed his eyes, and the memory swallowed him whole. The afternoon had been ordinary. Their father was away on business, the kind of business no one discussed. Their mother had died years earlier. It was just Marcus and Lily at home, with a few guards stationed at the perimeter. Lily wanted ice cream. There was a shop 2 blocks away. Marcus had walked her there 100 times before. Please, Marcus, please. I'll be so good. I won't ask for extra sprinkles. He'd said yes. They never reached the shop. The van came out of nowhere, black, windowless. It screeched to a stop beside them. 3 men jumped out. One grabbed Lily. She screamed a sound Marcus would hear in his nightmares for the rest of his life. He fought. God, he fought. He was 15 years old and already tall, already strong from training. He broke one man's nose. He cracked another's ribs. But there were too many. Someone hit him from behind. He went down hard, skull cracking against pavement. By the time his vision cleared, The van was gone. Lily was gone. They found her body 3 days later, dumped in an alley on the south side. A message to his father from a rival family. A warning wrapped in the corpse of a 6-year-old girl. His father's revenge was legendary. 17 men died in a single night. The rival family was erased from existence, not just killed, but obliterated. Their businesses burned, their names forgotten, their bloodline ended, but none of it brought Lily back. She was still dead, still gone, still lying in a cold morgue while Marcus stood beside her, holding the flower she'd given him. Unable to cry because crying wouldn't change anything, Marcus opened his eyes. The photograph stared back at him. Lily's smile, Lily's eyes, Lily's flower. 22 years. 22 years of building an empire. 22 years of becoming so powerful that no one would ever hurt anyone he loved again. 22 years of freezing his heart so solid that nothing could crack it. He had become the ghost because ghosts didn't feel. Ghosts didn't grieve. Ghosts simply existed, cold and untouchable, beyond the reach of human pain. But now there was a girl sleeping 2 doors down who had Lily's hair, Lily's eyes, Lily's fragile, broken trust. Emma wasn't Lily. He knew that. He wasn't trying to replace his sister or resurrect the past. The dead stayed dead, no matter how much you loved them. But Emma was here. Emma was alive. Emma had called him in the darkest hour of her life, and he had answered. Maybe that was enough. Maybe redemption wasn't about fixing what was broken. Maybe it was about protecting what still had a chance to heal. Marcus stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark grounds. Snow was falling again, soft and silent, covering the world in white. I was too late for you, Lily. He touched the glass. It was cold against his fingertips. I was 15 and weak, and I couldn't save you. I've spent 22 years becoming strong enough to destroy anyone who threatened me. But destruction isn't protection. Power isn't love. Fear isn't safety. He thought of Emma's face when he'd promised she would never go back. The tiny spark of hope fighting against years of learned despair. I'm not trying to replace you. No one could ever replace you. But maybe I can do for her what I couldn't do for you. Maybe I can save one child. Maybe that's what strength is supposed to be for. He turned away from the window and walked down the hallway. He stopped outside Emma's door and listened. Silence. Peaceful silence. The silence of a child sleeping safely for perhaps the first time in years. I was too late for Lily, he whispered to no one. I won't be too late for you. He stood there until dawn, keeping watch. And somewhere in the darkness, the ice around his heart cracked a little more. 2 weeks passed. Emma remained quiet. She still flinched at sudden movements. She still checked every door twice before entering a room. She still woke in the night, gasping from dreams she refused to describe. But there were changes. Small ones, almost invisible, the kind you only noticed if you were paying close attention. And Marcus was paying very close attention. She ate now without asking permission. The first few days, she had paused after every bite, looking around the table for disapproval. She had stopped when her plate was 1/3 empty, waiting to be told she could continue. Now she simply ate. Not fast, she would probably never eat fast. Would probably always savor food like someone who remembered starvation, but steadily, completely, until the plate was clean. Elena cried the first time Emma asked for seconds. She slept on the bed now, not in the center. Not sprawled out like a normal child. She curled herself into a tight ball at the very edge of the mattress, as if ready to roll onto the floor at a moment's notice. But she was on the bed. She was under the covers. Progress. She followed Elena everywhere. Through the kitchen as the older woman cooked, through the hallways as she dusted, through the garden as she tended the winter flowers. Emma didn't speak much during these excursions. She just stayed close, like a shadow, like a small creature seeking warmth. Elena never shooed her away. She simply talked about nothing, about everything, about recipes and weather and stories from her childhood. She let her voice fill the silence, asking nothing in return, and slowly, Emma began to respond. A word here, a nod there. Once, almost a smile. Marcus kept his distance, not because he wanted to, but because he understood. He was a large man with a frightening presence. Children who had been hurt by adults needed time to learn that not all adults were dangerous, so he watched from doorways. He listened from hallways. He made sure Emma saw him being gentle with Elena, being patient with the staff, being calm and quiet and never, ever raising his voice. He let her come to him on her own terms. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Marcus was in his study, reviewing documents Catherine Wells had sent over. The case against Victoria was building. Witness statements, Medical records, financial irregularities. The net was closing. A small knock interrupted his concentration. He looked up. Emma stood in the doorway, clutching the stuffed bear Elena had given her. "Can I come in?" "Of course." She entered slowly, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the bookshelves, the fireplace, the large desk covered in papers, and the photograph on the shelf beside the window. She walked toward it, stood on her tiptoes to see better, studied the image of a blonde girl in a yellow sundress, smiling at the camera. "Who is this?" Marcus's chest tightened. "Why do you ask?" "I walked past your room yesterday. The door was open. I saw pictures of her everywhere. She looks..." Emma hesitated. "She looks like me." Marcus set down his pen. He turned his chair to face her fully. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The question hung in the air, heavy with history, weighted with grief. "Her name was Lily," he finally said. "She was my sister." Emma's brow furrowed. "Was? She died. A long time ago, when she was about your age." "Oh." Emma looked at the photograph again. "She's pretty." "She was. What happened to her?" Marcus hesitated. "How did you explain violence to a child who had already seen too much of it? How did you describe loss to someone still learning that safety existed?" "Bad people took her," he said simply. "I tried to save her, but I wasn't strong enough. I was too young, too small. By the time I found her, it was too late." Emma was quiet for a long time. She looked at the photograph, then at Marcus, then at the photograph again. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You don't need to apologize, but you're sad. I can tell." She clutched her bear tighter. "You try to hide it, but I can see. You're sad like me." Marcus couldn't speak. This 7-year-old girl, broken and battered and only beginning to heal, had looked at him and seen past the ghost, past the empire, past the power and the fear and the reputation. She had seen the wound. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "I'm sad like you." Emma nodded slowly. She seemed to be processing something, making connections in her mind that children shouldn't have to make. "Is that why you saved me?" she asked. "Because I look like her?" The question pierced him. Was it? Was Emma just a replacement? A second chance at a rescue he had failed 22 years ago? He looked at this small, fragile girl standing in his study, brave enough to ask questions that most adults would avoid. "No," he said honestly. "I saved you because you needed saving. You called, and I answered. That's all that matters." Emma studied his face. Whatever she was looking for, she seemed to find it. "Okay," she said. She turned and walked toward the door, then stopped. "Mr. Marcus?" "Yes, I think Lily would be happy. That you're not sad alone anymore." She left before he could respond. Marcus sat motionless in his chair, staring at the empty doorway, feeling something shift inside his chest. Something that felt almost like healing. The federal courthouse stood like a monument to justice in downtown Chicago. Catherine Wells had spent 3 weeks building her case. Every witness prepared, every document verified, every photograph organized into a narrative impossible to ignore. Victoria Sullivan arrived in designer black, pearls at her throat, tissue in hand. The grieving mother, perfectly costumed, David sat beside her unshaven, hollow, drunk even now. Marcus waited outside in a black car. His reputation made courtroom presence impossible. Victor relayed every word through an earpiece. Dr. Cho testified first. She described Emma's injuries clinically: improperly healed ribs, burn scars, severe malnutrition, vitamin deficiencies from prolonged confinement. She showed photographs. The courtroom went silent. Martha Hendricks took the stand next, trembling but determined. "I heard crying from that basement for 2 years. Every night. I called Child Protective Services 3 times. Each time, that woman convinced them nothing was wrong." Rosa Martinez testified about the bakery. A starving child pressing her face to the glass, bruises on thin arms. A girl who begged her not to call police because it would only make things worse. Catherine presented her final evidence. Crime scene photographs from the Sullivan basement. The thin mattress, the plastic bucket, the blood stains soaked into concrete. The courtroom gasped. Based on evidence presented, Judge Morrison announced, "I find sufficient cause to proceed with charges of aggravated child abuse, unlawful imprisonment, and assault causing bodily harm. The defendant is remanded to custody pending trial." Victoria lunged to her feet. "Lies. That child is mentally disturbed. She makes up stories." Judge Morrison's voice cut like ice. "Evidence does not lie. Photographs do not lie. Remove the defendant." Victoria screamed as they handcuffed her. In the car outside, Marcus closed his eyes. She can't hurt Emma anymore. The request came 3 days after Victoria's arraignment. David Sullivan wanted to meet. Marcus's first instinct was refusal. What could this pathetic man possibly offer? What words could justify 3 years of willful blindness? But he agreed. Perhaps he needed to understand how a father could fail so completely. They met at a warehouse on the waterfront. Neutral territory. Victor stood guard by the door, hand resting near his weapon. 2 other men flanked the entrance. David Sullivan arrived alone. He looked like death walking. A week of stubble covered his sunken cheeks. His suit hung loose on a frame that had forgotten to eat. His hands trembled constantly, withdrawal from the alcohol his body now required to function. His eyes were the worst. Red, empty, drowned in guilt. He stopped 10 feet from Marcus. "Thank you for seeing me." Marcus said nothing. David swallowed hard. "I know you hate me. You should. I hate myself more than anyone ever could. Is that why you're here? To confess your self-loathing?" "No." David's voice cracked. "I came to explain. Not excuse, there's no excuse. But explain. The story spilled out like poison from a wound. When Claire died, I stopped existing. She was everything. My whole world. The cancer took her in 4 months, and it took me with her." He stared at the concrete floor. "I started drinking at her funeral. Haven't stopped since. The bottle was the only thing that made the pain bearable. The only way I could sleep without seeing her face." "And Emma?" David flinched at the name. Emma looked exactly like her mother. Every time I saw my daughter, I saw Claire. It was like being stabbed repeatedly. So I stopped looking. His hands clenched. Then Victoria came. She handled everything, the house, the bills, the business. She said she'd take care of Emma, so I could focus on healing. Healing. Marcus's tone was ice. That's what I told myself. That I was healing. That Emma was fine. That everything was under control. Tears streamed down David's face. I knew. Deep down, I always knew. I saw bruises I didn't question. Heard crying I pretended not to hear. Watched my daughter disappear into silence. And I did nothing. He looked up with ruined eyes. I told myself I didn't see it because seeing meant acting. And I was too broken. Too weak. Too lost in my own grief to save my own child. I am garbage. I know that. Marcus wanted to hit him. Every instinct screamed for violence. This shell of a man deserved to bleed. But Emma didn't need another story of violence. Marcus unclenched his fists. "What do you want from me?" David pulled out a folder. Creased. Stained with what might have been tears. Papers relinquishing my parental rights. Full custody transfer. Already signed. The court just needs to approve. Marcus didn't take it. "You're abandoning her. I'm giving her to someone who actually came when she called. Someone who fought for her." David's voice shattered. "I don't deserve to be her father. But she deserves a real life. With you." He placed the folder on a crate between them. "Just tell her one thing." "What?" "Tell her that her mother loved her. Claire loved Emma more than anything in this world. She sang to her every night, held her for hours." David wept openly now. "I failed Emma, but Claire never did. Tell her she was loved. Please." He turned and walked toward the door. His footsteps echoed in the empty space, the sound of a man already dead inside. Victor looked at Marcus, waiting for orders. Marcus picked up the folder. Let him go. David Sullivan disappeared into the night. He would check himself into rehabilitation the next morning. He would spend the rest of his life trying to become someone worthy of Claire's memory. He would never see his daughter again. The trial began 3 months after the preliminary hearing. Catherine Wells had used every day to strengthen her case. More witnesses, more evidence, more threads connecting Victoria Sullivan to a lifetime of calculated cruelty. The courtroom was packed. Media, advocates, curious citizens who had followed the story since Victoria's tearful television appearance. They would watch her empire of lies collapse. Catherine presented her case methodically. The medical records, the photographs, the testimony of Dr. Cho, Rosa, Martha Hendricks, every piece of evidence laid out like stones in a path leading straight to Victoria's guilt. But the new evidence changed everything. Your Honor, the prosecution wishes to introduce findings from the FBI's investigation into the deaths of Richard Malloy and Stephen Porter. Victoria's attorney objected immediately. Irrelevant. Prejudicial. Outside the scope. Judge Morrison overruled him. Catherine displayed the financial records. Insurance policies taken out on both men weeks before their deaths. Bank transfers. Hidden accounts. A pattern so clear it screamed premeditation. Richard Malloy drowned in his bathtub 18 months after marrying Victoria. Stephen Porter fell down the stairs 14 months after their wedding. Both deaths were ruled accidental. Both men had been drinking heavily. Both left everything to their wife. She turned to the jury. Victoria Sullivan didn't just abuse a child. She is a predator who has spent 2 decades destroying everyone who trusted her. Victoria's composure cracked. Her mask slipped. For one moment, the jury saw what lay beneath cold, calculating rage. It was enough. Tyler Sullivan was not present for the verdict. 3 weeks earlier, he had attacked a classmate with a metal chair. The boy required surgery. Tyler was transferred to a juvenile detention facility pending psychological evaluation. Victoria had raised a monster in her own image. Now both would face consequences. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. Guilty. Every count. Aggravated child abuse. Unlawful imprisonment. Assault causing serious bodily harm. Child endangerment. Victoria didn't scream this time. She sat frozen, staring at nothing, as reality finally penetrated her delusions. Sentencing followed 1 week later. 15 years. Federal prison. No parole eligibility for 12 years minimum. And the murder investigations continued. If charges were filed for Richard Malloy and Stephen Porter, Victoria Sullivan would die behind bars. Marcus was not at the courthouse. He was home. With Emma. She mattered more than watching Victoria be led away in chains. More than closure. More than vengeance. They sat in the garden together. Spring had arrived early. Elena's flowers were blooming yellow and pink and white, colors that had nothing to do with darkness. Emma was drawing. Crayons scattered around her. A half-finished picture of a house with a garden. Victor called. 15 years. It's done. Marcus thanked him and hung up. He watched Emma draw for a long moment. Then he spoke. The trial is over. Victoria's going to prison for a very long time. Emma's hand stopped moving. How long? 15 years. Maybe longer. She can't get out? No. And even after that, she will never be allowed near you. Ever. Emma set down her crayon. She stared at her drawing the house, the flowers, the 2 figures holding hands. She's really gone? She's really gone. Silence stretched between them. Marcus waited. He had learned that Emma needed time, that her emotions moved carefully, like a creature testing whether the ground was safe. Then she did something unexpected. She stood. She walked to where Marcus sat, and she wrapped her small arms around his neck. The embrace was awkward, uncertain. Her arms barely reached. Her body remained tense, as if she wasn't sure this was allowed. Marcus froze. 22 years since anyone had held him like this. 22 years since Lily. He didn't know what to do. His hands hovered in the air. His heart pounded against his ribs. Slowly, carefully, he lowered his arms. He wrapped them around Emma's fragile body. He held her. Something cracked open inside his chest. Something that had been sealed shut for 22 years. Something that felt like grief and relief and hope all tangled together. His eyes burned, and for the first time since Lily died, Marcus Blackwood let himself feel. The Blackwood estate had transformed, not the walls or gardens, but the air itself had changed. It now carried something it hadn't known in 22 years. The sound of a child laughing. Emma Sullivan turned 8 in April. She ran downstairs in unicorn pajamas, her hair flying, her feet thundering on marble. She looked nothing like the skeleton Marcus had carried from that basement. Her cheeks were pink with health. Her hair fell past her shoulders in shiny waves. She had gained 23 pounds. Grown 4 inches. She looked like a child should look. 2nd grade at Whitmore Academy had been challenging. Victoria had kept Emma uneducated. When Marcus enrolled her, she could barely read, but she was brilliant. Her tutors were astonished. What other children learned in weeks, Emma mastered in days. By year's end, she had surpassed her classmates. The nightmares still came less frequently now. Dr. Sarah Mitchell said healing wasn't linear. Emma was learning that words could release pain instead of causing it. The men had adapted. Victor now carried butterscotch candies for the little miss. The capos competed to make her laugh. They brought gifts and treated her like royalty. The ghost had a daughter. Impossibly. It worked. Marcus was changing too. Violence had decreased. He was transitioning businesses toward legitimacy. Real estate. Restaurants. Lily's bakery. Emma knew nothing of this. To her, Marcus simply worked and came home for dinner, a man who read stories and never raised his voice. On a Thursday afternoon, Emma appeared in his study. She carried a paper against her chest. I made you something. A crayon drawing. 2 figures, one tall, one small holding hands. A house. Flowers. Sunday. At the bottom. My family. Marcus's throat closed. Do you like it? It's perfect. He walked to the shelf where Lily's photograph sat alone and placed Emma's drawing beside it. 2 children, 2 pieces of his heart, one lost, one found, family. Catherine Wells arrived on a gray October morning. Her expression told Marcus everything before she spoke. This wasn't a friendly visit. This was an ultimatum. The court has reviewed Emma's custody situation. Your background presents serious concerns. Meaning you have 2 options. Catherine set down her briefcase. Leave the organization entirely, every connection, every business, every shadow of your former life, and adopt Emma legally. Or keep your empire. And she enters foster care. The words landed like bullets. The state won't place a child permanently with a known crime figure, no matter how much you've changed, no matter how much she loves you. Marcus stared at her. 22 years. 22 years of blood and power and empire building. Everything he had sacrificed. Everything he had become. Against one little girl who called him when she was afraid. That's not a choice, he said. No, it isn't. He called the meeting that night. Every capo, every lieutenant, every man who had sworn loyalty to the ghost. They gathered in the warehouse where it all began. Tension crackling in the air. Marcus told them. Silence. Then Victor stepped forward, disbelief carved into his face. You built this for 22 years. Blood, bodies, everything we have. And you're walking away? His voice cracked. For a child? Marcus looked at his oldest friend. For a child. She's not even yours. She's mine in every way that matters. The room erupted. Arguments, protests, accusations of weakness, of betrayal, of madness. Marcus raised his hand. The noise stopped. The empire will be divided among those who've earned it. Territories, businesses, resources. Each of you gets a share proportional to your service. And you? Someone demanded. I keep what's legitimate. Real estate, the restaurants, Lily's bakery, nothing else. Victor shook his head slowly. You're giving up everything. No, I'm choosing what matters. The transition took 6 months, piece by piece. Marcus dismantled his kingdom. He transferred power, signed documents, watched everything he'd built dissolve into other hands. It should have felt like dying. It felt like freedom. Emma knew nothing. She went to school, drew pictures, laughed with Elena, slowly, steadily healed. She had no idea her world was being rebuilt around her. The adoption hearing came on a Tuesday in April. A federal courtroom, a stern judge, Catherine Wells as witness, and Emma, sitting beside Marcus in a blue dress Elena had chosen. The judge reviewed the paperwork. Signed, stamped. I hereby approve the adoption of Emma Sullivan by Marcus Blackwood. She will be known as Emma Sullivan Blackwood. The gavel fell. Done. Outside, spring sunlight warmed the courthouse steps. Emma squinted up at Marcus. What happens now? Now we go home. But what changes? Marcus knelt beside her. You're officially my daughter. Legally. Permanently. No one can ever take you away. Emma considered this. Do I get a different name? If you want. Emma Blackwood. Or keep Sullivan. Whatever feels right. She tested the words silently. Her lips moved. Then she smiled. Emma Blackwood. It sounds like I have a family. Marcus took her hand. You do have a family. You always did. Emma squeezed his fingers. Okay then. She looked up at him. Let's go home, Dad. Dad. The word hit him like sunlight after 22 years of darkness. Let's go home, he said, and the ghost disappeared forever, leaving only a father walking hand in hand with his daughter into a future neither had dared to imagine. 5 years later, Chicago had changed. The world had changed. But nothing had changed more than the 2 people sitting across from each other at a kitchen table on a quiet Sunday evening. Emma Blackwood was 12 years old. She was tall for her age now, healthy and strong, with her mother's blonde hair falling past her shoulders and her father's quiet intensity in her eyes. She attended Whitmore Academy on a full scholarship she had earned herself. She had friends. She had hobbies. She had a life. She had survived. Marcus Blackwood was 42. His hair had grayed at the temples. The hard lines of his face had softened. He ran a chain of restaurants and a bakery that bore his sister's name, legitimate businesses that employed hundreds of people across the city. But Lily's bakery had become something more. It had grown into a foundation, a shelter, a safe haven for children who had nowhere else to go. Rosa managed the outreach program, finding kids like Emma had once been hungry, scared, invisible, giving them food, giving them hope, giving them a phone number to call when the darkness became too much. Elena still ran the household. She was grandmother to Emma in every way that mattered, spoiling her with cookies and wisdom in equal measure. Victor had stayed. No longer a soldier, now a protector. Uncle Victor, Emma called him. He pretended to find the title annoying. Everyone knew he loved it. Dad? Marcus looked up from his book. Emma sat across from him, her homework spread on the table, her expression unusually serious. Can I ask you something? Always. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully, the way she'd learned to do in therapy, the way she'd learned to do with difficult truths. Do you ever regret it? Giving up everything? For me, Marcus set down his book. He looked at his daughter, this remarkable young woman who had once been a trembling skeleton in a frozen basement. This survivor who had taught him more about strength than 22 years of violence ever had. I used to think power was strength, he said slowly. Money was strength. The fear people had of me, that was strength. And now I know better. He glanced at Lily's photograph on the shelf, then back at Emma. A 7-year-old girl called me at midnight, bleeding and terrified, and she taught me what strength really means. What does it mean? Marcus leaned forward. It means protecting people without destroying them. It means loving without possessing. It means being strong in a way that builds rather than breaks. Emma smiled. A real smile, bright and unguarded, the kind of smile she couldn't make 5 years ago. The good kind of strong, she said. Marcus smiled back. The good kind of strong. And somewhere in Chicago, in a bakery named Lily's, a small photograph hung on the wall behind the counter. It showed 2 people standing together in front of the shop. A tall man with gray at his temples, a small girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, both smiling at the camera, both whole. Beneath the photograph, in a child's careful handwriting, were 7 words. My dad, Marcus. He's the good kind of strong. This story teaches us something profound about the nature of true strength. The world often tells us that power comes from dominance, from wealth, from making others fear us. But Marcus Blackwood discovered a different truth. Real strength lies in gentleness, in choosing compassion over violence, in protecting the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. Every day, there are children like Emma trapped in darkness, waiting for someone to answer their call. And there are people like Rosa, who see suffering and refuse to look away, who give a hungry child bread when no one is watching, who offer a phone number and a promise that help exists. You don't need to be powerful to be strong. You just need to care. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our daily stories of hope and humanity. We would love to hear from you. How did Emma's journey make you feel? Have you ever witnessed someone show the good kind of strong in your own life? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We read every single one, and your stories inspire us to keep creating content that matters. Don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of this community. We wish you good health, happiness, and peace in your daily life. May you always find the strength to be kind. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next video.